and by giving testimony would get some benefit, either in their treatment, in the length of their sentence, or some other benefit by coming forward and saying anything and potentially convicting someone, again, uncorroborated by anybody else. So what the commission suggested was, and keep in mind, this is a commission that was made up of prosecutors, public defenders, victims' rights advocates, as well as law enforcement officials. And unanimously, they suggested to the legislature that we not allow testimony in court from inmates unless it is corroborated in some other fashion. There was an example that had been brought to their attention where someone had served 6 years for a crime they didn't commit in Los Angeles County, and we have the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office here to tell you in more detail. An individual had served over 2 decades for a murder, convicted on uncorroborated in-custody testimony, only to realize later that this person had lied and this person had nothing to do with that crime. And when you look at this even more closely, it's not only the inmate who has been wrongly convicted that suffers. It's also the victim who suffers because justice has not been brought forward, and our communities suffer because the real perpetrator is still out there potentially committing more crimes. So, again, the commission suggested that this legislature, not unlike 17 other states, require that in-custody testimony must be corroborated before it can come into court so that then a jury can decide whether or not to believe it. Now, my predecessor, Senator Gloria Romero, introduced a bill a few years ago, SB 609, and as that bill was moving forward, the Orange County Register wrote in favor of it, and it said that Senator Romero's bill would require that testimony from jailhouse informants be corroborated by other evidence. The commission pointed to a man who spent 8 years in jail based on unreliable testimony by a prisoner. This seems like a basic measure, given that jailhouse informants have every reason to lie, given that the authorities give them leniency in exchange for their testimony. That was from the Orange County Register. So that bill passed with bipartisan support to the governor's desk. Unfortunately, Governor Schwarzenegger, who vetoed it. We are back today, having passed it through the Senate, asking for your aye vote.
Thank you so much, Senator. And first witness.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you. My name is Alexandra Natapoff. I'm a professor of law at Loyola Law School, Los Angeles, and I'm the author of a book about the use of criminal informants published by New York University Press a couple of years ago. I'd like to thank the committee for giving me the opportunity today to testify in support of this bill. The in-custody informant, sometimes referred to as a jailhouse informant, has become a nationally recognized, indeed an internationally recognized challenge. Many states are already addressing it. This corroboration requirement is a best practice. It has been recommended by the American Bar Association, by numerous state commissions, in addition to California's, and it is an excellent first step in addressing this pressing problem. Senator Leno has laid out the many reasons that the bill is necessary, and so I won't repeat those. One concern that is sometimes raised is that a corroboration requirement might prevent prosecutors from using informants. This bill does not do that. It clearly permits the continued use of jailhouse informants in a more reliable way. Another concern that is sometimes raised is that a corroboration requirement might interfere with the jury's decision or take a decision away from the jury. This bill does not do that either. Instead, it helps juries make better decisions by giving them better information. Of course, we do this with rules of evidence and procedure all the time to protect the integrity of the trial process. For example, we already have a corroboration requirement in California for accomplices because, like jailhouse informants, accomplice testimony, evidence, we know is particularly unreliable. Many other states agree. We know from the California Commission on the Fair Administration of Justice that at least 17 other states have a jailhouse informant corroboration requirement. It would be more accurate to say that other states have at least such a requirement.
We're going to need you to conclude.
Many other states have greater protections against unreliable testimony. Texas, Illinois, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office has been a leader in this regard. In some, this bill is a basic and vital step, and I strongly support.
Thank you very much. All right, next witness. We usually have two witnesses, 2 minutes each, but we do grant exceptions.
Good morning. Natasha Minsker, Death Penalty Policy Director for the ACLU of California. The problems with jailhouse informants are even more severe in death penalty cases. The lies of a jailhouse informant can make the difference between life and death. They can turn a getaway driver into a shooter, a remorseful 18-year-old into a heartless killer who boasts about his conduct, a battered woman who feared for her life into a conniving wife who just wanted to get rid of her husband. These are the kinds of lies that informants tell that make the difference between life and death, that make jurors vote for death when they would otherwise choose life without parole. Informants in California death penalty cases have received staggering benefits, from the dismissal of capital murder charges that they themselves faced to cash payments totaling thousands of dollars. Prosecutors are also often more likely to use jailhouse informants in death penalty cases, research shows, because often there are no eyewitnesses and because these are high-profile cases with intense pressure to get convictions. So in the very cases where we should be most cautious, they are most often used. This bill is a very small reform and is really the least that we can do. The Bipartisan Constitution Project, in fact, recommended that in death penalty cases, if a jailhouse informant is used, the death penalty should simply be off the table. This is a small step, and we strongly urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chair, members, Dan Filizzato on behalf of the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. About 20 years ago in Los Angeles County, we had a problem with a jailhouse informant who was able to use the payphone system inside the jail and contact various law enforcement agencies in Los Angeles County and get confidential information regarding open cases. He then used that information to provide misleading information regarding those defendants. Because of that misleading information, several defendants were convicted wrongly based on that testimony. Because of that, 17 years ago, our office changed our policy and required the policy that's very similar to what Senator Leno's bill has done. Since then, we have had no problems obtaining convictions and believe that because of the change in our policy, we ensure that only those who are truly guilty of the crimes are
Thank you very much. Mr. Hernandez, briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. Ignacio Hernandez on behalf of the California Attorneys for Criminal Justice, Statewide Association of Criminal Defense Attorneys. Because this bill brings a balance and trust to the system, we ask for your support.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support?
Libby Sanchez on behalf of the California Public Defenders Association, one of the sponsors of this measure. We're really proud to be a sponsor of this, and we urge your aye vote. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition?
Morning, Mr. Chair. Curtis Hill on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association. We asked for a no vote this morning on this bill. This bill has come before this body twice, and not only with Senator Romero's bill, but also it came in SB 1589 in 2008. It's basically unchanged from the two original bills. We're in opposition for it as the keepers of the jails in California. We understand the pro arguments before you this morning, but we're very concerned about these issues relative to crimes committed within facilities and what the effect would be on this. We do work closely with our district attorneys all up and down the state. We're in opposition. I can tell you, I was a member of the Fair Administration of Justice. It was not a unanimous vote on this and a number of other measures that were finally came out as recommendations. However, I ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next witness in opposition.
Adi Varadkar on behalf of the California District Attorneys Association. We are in opposition to this bill. It's very difficult to testify in opposition, especially when we have a member of our organization, the LA District Attorney's Office, in support of this measure. Office policy is one thing. Office policy can often make room for exceptions. This bill does not. This bill creates a statutory provision which prevents prosecutors from using an entire class of evidence, and that is that of an in-custody informant. In addition, this also prohibits the prosecution then from using someone else in the jail who may have heard the same thing from corroborating that first in-custody informant. The other issue is that crimes, obviously the sheriff representative indicated crimes in jail are already notoriously difficult to prosecute. Often the recipient witnesses refuse to testify either from fear of retaliation or because they don't like the correctional people. And an in-custody informant would then be the only link to solving that particular crime, whether it was smuggling of contraband or assault on another prisoner or any other crime there within the jail. I leave you with two possible scenarios. You had a case where you had a drive-by shooting. A number of the gang members who were involved are in jail. They love to brag about their crimes. It gives them status while they're in the joint, while they're in the prison awaiting trial.
Okay, you're going to have to...
Okay, I'll close up. And with the recipient witnesses intimidated on the outside by their cronies, that in-custody informant would be able to say that this individual among these three was the shooter. It's for these reasons and many more we oppose this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Any other witnesses in opposition?
Good morning, members. Lieutenant Barbara Ferguson from San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department in opposition to the bill for the reasons stated already.
All right, thank you very much. Any other witnesses in opposition? All right, seeing none, members, any questions? Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm sympathetic to the cause, but I'm wondering if we're doing this maybe a little bit off. So I just want to ask you a few questions. Like you said originally that 20% of the acquittals from the death row were done by in-custody testimony.
Actually,
informant.
I need to correct that.
Okay.
Here in California, 20% of all acquittals represent capital and non-capital cases. About 50% of exonerated death row inmates were convicted on in-custody testimony.
Okay. On the 20% example for all the capital, non-capital offenses, what was the other 80% generally due to the acquittals on that? Was it also witness testimony, or is it evidential based? Do you have any kind of
variety of
numbers
things,
that?
I'm sure.
So a variety of things. Unfortunately, I've studied this as well about both the college and also my professional career. Eyewitness testimony is the most unreliable, but also mostly well used because you need to have some kind of storyline to go. I mean, it'd be great if we have hard fact, DNA evidence, and other evidential base on every case there is, but we just don't have that. I'm wondering, like with the district attorneys who support this, LA and San Francisco, do they have internal policies where they will not use those witnesses in their own cases at this point? And when that could be done on that level, DA by DA, and isn't that part of that criminal justice process where you have to weigh the factual basis of that evidence? Sometimes it's going to be collaborated strongly, others it won't, when you get to that circumstantial evidence as well. But can the DAs on their own decide, hey, I'm not going to prosecute this case because that's all I have for evidence at this point? Don't they have that right not to file the case as it is?
The LA District Attorney's Office has put in place for the past 17 years a more stringent requirement than this bill requires. They require strong corroborative evidence, and they have a whole process. They have a committee that determines what's strong, what's not strong. Ours just says you need some corroborating evidence. It doesn't set the higher standard that
So they can't do it on their own without this being legislated at this point if the DA feels that that's not going to be strong enough for his case.
That is current law.
Okay. Also, Mr. Chair,
and with current law, 20% of all exonerated individuals in California were put into prison wrongly because of in-custody testimony. That's the problem we're trying to address.
Correct. We also stated that a lot of times the poor witness testimony or the fake witness testimony, I should say, from in custody defendants are done because they receive certain privileges or time off their sentence and stuff. Would that not be something else we would look at, or maybe alternatively look at, to not be able to pay off these witnesses to provide testimony? Would you not look at that source as well?
The commission
that's policy as well within the county, both the DA's office and the sheriff, right? So these things, to me, seem like to be handled internally versus blocking off the state as a whole. Each law enforcement group with their DAs and their sheriffs can work on this and say, these are the rules and restrictions we want to have in our departments. We have a very high success rate. And then on the public defender side, the defense can also argue, if that's your only witness, that's a very weak piece of evidence to try to convict someone on.
Mr. Hegman, what I think you're suggesting is probably would be a good idea to have an independent body made up of prosecutors and public defenders and victim rights advocates and all of these people to look at this and come up with some suggestions on how to deal with it. And that's exactly what we did. The Commission on the Fair Administration of Justice, in a bipartisan fashion, came up with this suggestion and passed it to us, having looked at all the different options to resolve the problem we've identified.
Yeah, just in general, philosophical viewpoint from my part is we have such a wide, diverse, large state, 1/8 of the population of the United States, different regions. We try to have this one fix fit all the time. It doesn't quite seem to be that way. I'm thinking internally for the sheriff's department, there is a lot of crime that goes on in both our corrections and our county jail system. Mm-hmm. All you have is those type of things, unless you have physical evidence. That's why I want the power to be internally. And I think what you're saying is the DAs and the prosecutors and the sheriffs have that power to make their own rules and regulations of what they want to use, or make that decision on a case-by-case basis even. You're saying LA already does it, that says we are not going to prosecute unless we have this level of evidence based on these type of crimes. It may be different for ones out in public than versus in custody too. But once we put a blanket sheet on there, I have a hard time doing that on almost a lot of different policy.
All right. Thank you. And are there any other questions or statements? Ms. Yamada?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Leno, thank you for bringing this bill forward. I believe if you could comment on a little bit on what Assemblymember Hagman raised. Isn't it that you are seeking to establish sort of a statewide standard so that justice would be administered in the same way, whether it's San Francisco, Los Angeles, or Yolo or Solano counties? I mean, while I understand that we are a very complex and diverse state, should there not be a statewide standard for this type of evidence?
I think what you're pointing to, Assemblywoman, is that the Commission identified a serious problem. They didn't suggest, well, counties, you can do what you want about it. It suggested to the legislature, this is a serious problem. We're wasting significant amounts of limited resources that we could be using to make sure that we get the bad guys and make the bad guys serve their time. And one of the other ramifications of this is that when people know they can get away with crimes and when they know they can game the system by lying, there's ever less respect for the system itself. And we, in a democracy, must have respect for our judicial system or everything begins to fall apart. This is to put respect back into the system so that someone who has every reason to lie can't lie, get away with it, and get a benefit, and thereby let the real perpetrator go free.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to, if there are no other questions or comments from the committee, I'm going to take that as your close, Senator.
If I could just share one last
Certainly.
line. This is from our former colleague, Assemblyman Chuck DeVore, who supported this bill when Senator Romero authored it a few years back. And he was quoted in the Orange County Register as saying, "For me, this is an issue of fundamental justice for the accused. This bill deals with the abuse uncovered in the jailhouse informant scandals of the 1990s, with defendants convicted and sentenced to death based on the testimony of in-custody informants without any corroboration or support." Chuck DeVore's reason for voting aye. I'd ask for your aye vote today.
Okay. Do we have a second for the second? All right. And Senator, I do support this bill very much. It's not hard to imagine that a person in custody has many incentives to provide information to authorities, and I think common sense tells us that this information should be corroborated. And and I also think that needs some uniformity. Even with our great diversity and nuance, we still need parameters. So I'm supporting your bill and recommend an aye vote.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Amiano? Amiano, aye. Knight? Knight, no. Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Hagman? Hagman, no. Hill? Hill, aye. Mitchell? Mitchell, aye. Yamada? Yamada, aye.
Bill is out 5-2. Say hi to Mr. DeVore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee members. He's going to come testify on our hemp bill.
All right. Senator Liu, please. He didn't know.
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you. This is a very simple bill, and this simply adds security officers and custody assistants to the penal code section for battery.
Second. Okay.
Do you want me to go on and explain this?
If you just want to, for the sake of the public, yes.
Well, the bill is sponsored by the LA Professional Peace Officers Association and Sheriff Lee Baca, and as I said, it's simply adding these two folks to the penal code, and I simply ask for your aye vote.
Okay. Any questions or comments? I recommended a none on this. Can leave it up to the individual committee members for policy reasons. I believe it does make good sense for these public employees, but I also have concerns about increasing existing penalties given our prison issues. But saying that, take a roll call, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Any witnesses in support?
Sergeant Bill Mulder with Los Angeles County Sheriff Department, appearing on behalf of Sheriff Lee Baca and the LA County Professional Peace Officers Association. We ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Any witnesses in opposition? All right, seeing none. A roll call, please. Thank you.
Amiano? Knight? Aye. Knight, aye. Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Hagman? Hagman, aye. Hill? Aye. Hill, aye. Mitchell? Mitchell, aye. Yamada? Yamada, aye.
Congratulations, your will is out.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Vargas. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I apologize. I don't have Chuck DeVore here either, but I don't know where he'd be on my bill.
Too.
Thank you for allowing me to present SB 291, Mr. Chairman and members. This bill would require that after a fugitive has been brought back to the state by extradition proceedings, the person shall be committed to county jail with the bail set in the amount of $100,000 in addition to the amount of bail appearing on the warrant. In addition, SB 291 would require that a notice hearing take place prior to deviating from the proposed bail amount of $100,000. Under existing law, criminal defendants extradited back to California may bail out prior to appearing before a judge. Sometimes these defendants become fugitives the second time leaving California for refuge in another state. Upon capture, these defendants are extradited back to California at considerable expense to the taxpayers. We're trying to discourage this type of jumping bail. We do have, Mr. Chairman, here people to testify on behalf of the San Diego District Attorney's Office.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Witnesses in support, 2 minutes, 2 witnesses.
Yes. Good morning, Chairman Amiano and members of the Public Safety Committee. I'm Deputy District Attorney Sylvia Tenorio. I'm here on behalf of San Diego County District Attorney Bonnie Dumanis. I've been a district attorney, a deputy district attorney for 11 years, and I handle the office's international and domestic extradition. And I'm also on the chair of the Extradition and Foreign Prosecution Committee of CDAA. As has already been stated by Senator Vargas, AB 291 or SB 291 is an insurance policy that would guarantee that a judge would have an opportunity to address bail once a defendant has been extradited back to California. This bill does not impact judicial review. It simply gives us a 48-hour insurance policy that this person will appear before a judge so that bail can be appropriately addressed by both sides, not just the prosecution, but by the defense. And as has been said, this addresses a narrowly tailored class of people, which are people that have already fled, have been found in another state, and have had to be brought back to the state of California to face untried charges. And I can tell you that given the state of the current fiscal crisis, everyone in prosecutorial agencies across California have been impacted. As a result, we are only extraditing people on serious and violent offenses in my county because we simply cannot afford to go back and spend $2,000 to $6,000 to bring back someone who faces a misdemeanor charge. These are people that face serious and violent charges. So in that respect, we see this as a narrowly tailored law. And again, we are targeting people that have already fled, and we're trying to prevent them from fleeing again. $100,000 is reasonable bail to ensure that appearance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Marty Varanakar on behalf of the California District Attorneys Association. We're in strong support of this measure. These individuals have already fled once. They've been picked up in another state, extradited, and we want to ensure that they are around to receive a measure of justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? All right, the bill's been moved, so we need a second. And any witnesses in opposition? If you'd like to come to the table, it's fine. You get 2 minutes.
Liberty Sanchez on behalf of the California Public Defenders Association. We have just a difference of opinion with the author and the sponsors on this about the impact and the implications of this measure. Under existing law, judges are required to look at the totality of circumstances in determining and setting bail, and in so doing, we believe that they would look at exactly what this bill seeks to address. Therefore, we believe that this bill would kind of result in a double dipping or a double bail setting, an enhanced bail setting for people who can least afford it. Our experience is that criminal defendants who are not able to get released on bail and are in custody during their hearings have a much harder time in their hearings than those that are able to be released on bail. The clients that we represent, 80% of criminal defendants, 90% of criminal defendants in felony proceedings are indigent and are unable often to scrape together the necessary amount to make bail. And so we believe that this bill will have an additional disparate and detrimental impact on the clients we represent, those who can least afford it. For those reasons, we are opposed to this measure.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Ignacio Hernandez, on behalf of CACJ. And just briefly, our concerns is that really the motivation of this bill, as it's been expressed to us, is that for folks that have skipped town multiple times and have committed serious felonies. The problem is this bill is not restricted to those cases. And I can bring a long line of cases in front of you that you probably wouldn't think the 100,000 should apply to, but they will. In the same way the proponents can bring to you a long line of cases where the 100,000 might apply. That's the problem with trying to set bail here in the legislature. You have to look at the totality of the circumstances. You have to look at the facts of the individual cases. You can't set it from here in Sacramento, and that's the problem with this bill. If this were restricted just to felonies, if this were restricted to someone who already has a single incident of non-appearance, that's a very different discussion. But this would apply to misdemeanors. And we do have cases where individuals, for a variety of reasons, don't show up to court in another state on a misdemeanor and are brought back. It doesn't happen often, but it happens enough that we are concerned with that portion of it. So we think the bill should be narrowed. And for those reasons, we're opposed to it.
Thank you very much. Are there any other witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is actually a field I know pretty well. I just had a couple of technical questions on the author's intent as well. There's an official extradited process. That means someone actually physically gets arrested by law enforcement outside the state jurisdiction, and then the prosecution agency brings them back. When you're talking with bail, also, the bondsman also has that right to go out of state in most circumstances and to arrest and return a defendant as well. They're not officially extradited. Are you looking for the enhancement to be for anyone who flees outside the state on those serious charges, or strictly who go through the extraditable process?
This law would, I think, apply to the first situation you talk about, which is when we officially go through the official extradition process. We get a call from another state, from a sheriff's department. They say, we're holding someone here. Do you want to extradite them? We go through a very detailed analysis of the case and determine whether or not we should extradite them. When they're officially extradited pursuant to the Uniform Criminal Extradition Act, that's when this would apply.
Okay. And then I also know that several of our county jails, unfortunately because of the overcrowding situation, are releasing folks on certain bail amounts or lower. And I was wondering, for the counties that you're dealing with right now, like San Diego, do you have a level of bail that is being released basically by the sheriff due to overcrowding at this point?
I don't believe we've encountered that issue yet in our county, but I can't speak for everybody else.
It may come up.
All right. More? I'm just asking. Do you have more?
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll stop there.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do you want to close, Senator, briefly?
Well, first of all, thank you for the time. And I'd say this, the issue of the totality of the circumstances, the judge still gets to set the bail. All this does really gives them 48 hours to say, you can't jump bail. You already have a history of fleeing to a different state. So that's what this bill attempts to do. The judge can still come in and set the bail higher or lower. That she or he has that opportunity. It also gives both sides an opportunity to come forward and give more facts. I think it's a well-balanced bill, and I think it deserves your support. I would ask
for
my vote.
Well, thank you very much. And it's an interesting bill. I am concerned about the separation of powers and the legislature's ability to or inability to set bail. Furthermore, I believe I still feel that there are restrictions on the judge, and I prefer that judges have more flexibility to set bail on a case-by-case basis. So I can't support your bill today, but I am recommending a none to my colleagues. So if we can have a roll call, please.
Amiano?
No.
Amiano, no. Knight? Aye. Knight, aye. Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Hagman? Hagman, aye. Hill? Hill, aye. Mitchell? Mitchell, no. Yamada?
All right, the bill is out. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank
All right,
you.
if we could have Senator LaMalfa, please. Item 3, SB 390. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. How are you doing? Morning, members. Thanks for having me in the Public Safety Committee here today. We're presenting SB 390, which is a pretty simple bill as well. Not unlike on the lines of what Senator Carol Liu just presented a little while ago. This bill seeks to add search and rescue personnel to the list of folks would be aligning with for the same types of penalties for an assault and battery on search and rescue personnel. So it's in keeping with the same penalties for $2,000 fine, 1 year in jail as a maximum for a non-injury
Just
assault.
a quick question. Do we have data about the statistics around this? You know, how many assaults have
I
happened?
would leave that to my witnesses here
Okay.
who probably could weigh in on that as well. So with
just
that,
curious.
So we know the critical duties that they provide for us in search and rescue operations for searching for missing people, and along that line, some of the other folks involved that would be comparable under this bill would be assault against a peace officer, firefighter, an EMT, paramedics, lifeguard, a process server, traffic officer, code enforcement officers, or animal control officers. So we're just trying to keep it all kind of the same community here. We think it's very appropriate. So with that, I have witnesses here that I'd like to.
Okay, the bill's been moved and seconded, and 2 witnesses, 2 minutes, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Danielle Higgs on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association. We are the sponsor of the bill and appreciate the Senator carrying this. To address your question, the sheriffs do not have statewide data on this, but one of the things that we are seeing is...
Or anecdotal, at least.
Yeah, for the example, and Marla may be able to speak to this, but in San Diego, in the missing person case of Chelsea King, that there was an incident of a search and rescue personnel being assaulted, and when it was charged, that offense was actually dropped for this particular offense. And so this is one thing that we're seeking to make sure that it's clear in law that search and rescue personnel that operate either with the Sheriff's Department, Police Department, or any governmental agency, including CalEMA and other emergency management, are addressed in statute. I'd like to introduce also Sergeant Joe Sheraton with San Mateo Sheriff's Department.
Good morning. I'm sorry. My name is Joe Sheridan. I'm a sergeant at the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office, and I currently oversee our search and rescue units. I want to thank Senator LaMalfa for running SB 390, and as the Senator indicated, we hold our search and rescue volunteers very valuable, and they provide a service that's immeasurable, when you're out looking for a missing person. So, and we want to. I just asked for an aye vote.
Thank you, sir, very much. Are there any other witnesses in support?
Marla Marshall, on behalf of Sheriff Bill Gore and the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. As Ms. Higgs stated, we had an incident shortly after Chelsea was found in the area of trying to secure the perimeters. And our search and rescue people are out there all day, every day. In this case, they were dredging the waters, and they aren't paid for their services. And there was an individual who tried to interfere by coming within the perimeters, and they would not allow that person to move forward, and the person assaulted one of the search and rescue. And because they do not come under this statute, as some of the other volunteers do, the charges were dropped. So that's why we're asking for to have them included in the statute. Thank you.
Just curious, wouldn't that be covered by simple assault laws? I am going to support this bill, but I am curious about that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's the simple assault is $1,000 or 6 months here. We're aligning this with other public safety personnel, as these are folks that are brought in by groups such as sheriff departments, fire departments, or CalEMA.
Yeah. All right. Any other witnesses in support?
Yes, good morning, members. Lieutenant Barbara Ferguson, San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. Our search and rescue folks do this for free. They buy all of their own equipment or get it donated, and we're asking for support of this to help.
They do receive training, though.
Yes, absolutely, they do receive training.
Okay,
thank you.
Any other witnesses in support?
Good morning, Chair and members. Sergeant Bill Mulder with the Los Angeles County Sheriff Department, appearing on behalf of Sheriff Lee Baca, and we're in strong support and would ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Okay. Mulder. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Thinking the X-Files. So,
yeah, I'm thinking that too.
I guess he's never heard that before. All right. Any witnesses in opposition? All right. Seeing none, would you like to close briefly, Senator?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Again, I'm very appreciative of the strong support from the State Sheriff's Association and all the counties here that have weighed in on it, and so I ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
All right, the bill's already been moved and seconded, and I do have concerns always about penalty increases. However, these are very good people doing very good work, and I actually had not heard about any of them being assaulted. So bringing that forth, I'm going to support the bill, and if we could have a roll call, please.
Amiano?
Aye.
Amiano, aye. Knight? Knight, aye. Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Hagman? Hagman, aye. Hill? Hill, aye. Mitchell? Mitchell, aye. Yamada.
The bill is out. Congratulations.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very
I'm off
much.
to the shark-infested waters of the Natural Resources Committee, and now it's boom, 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 boom. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Land shark. Yeah. Okay. Mr. DeSaulnier, please approach the bench. Bail is set at.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for letting me present SB 608 today. This is a result of a project in the East Bay that is attempting to expand statewide. K through 12 is a nonprofit organization that puts together essential packets for kids. They assemble them. We're doing it with volunteers. Myself and Senator Hancock were involved in this, along with Assembly Member Bonilla. and in discussion with the operators of this project, so they basically compile with grant money. There's no state money involved in this. The essential things for young people in disadvantaged school districts. So it's simple as pencils, notebooks, pads of paper, things like that. And what we would do then is try, through a volunteer effort, try to put them all together into a backpack. The program became so successful, volunteers weren't working. So just in a good sort of chemistry moment, I spoke with Benito, who will speak shortly, who runs the program, and we talked about asking the Department of Corrections if we could use the prison industry to help with putting the packets together. So Secretary Kate gave us a waiver to do it last year. It was a very successful program at Folsom, at the Folsom Prison, where the Prison Industry Authority does some of this work. Went out there, and we were actually talking to some of the inmates and said that they were from Richmond and Oakland, and a lot of these packets would go prospectively back to their own kids. So it was really a good thing. The Prison Industry Authority can speak to how effective it was for them. We put the packets together, but we couldn't do it for any longer because the Secretary could only do the waiver for a year prospectively. So this bill basically allows the program to continue. We've narrowed the focus, so it's just applicable to this kind of program.
Right.
And I have two witnesses, and I'll ask them to speak briefly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. I think he pretty much touched on it all. The only thing I would say, just to give you an idea of the volume that we're dealing with, our order for last fall was enough to fill over 150 52-foot trucks full of school supplies, hand stacked. It's at an industrial scale. We did 170,000 of these kits in Alameda, Contra Costa, and San Francisco counties last fall. We're starting pilot operations throughout the state for 2012, and we're expecting to expand into every Bay Area county as early as this fall. So, and our partnership with PIA is crucial to our success.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. Next witness in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric Reslock on behalf of CalPIA. The Prison Industry Board voted to support this bill back in April, and at that time the bill would have allowed us to sell to more nonprofits. Particularly, we were thinking of the 500,000 people that no longer get the Medi-Cal benefit for eyeglasses, but perhaps that's a discussion for another day. Since we are statutorily obligated to be self-sufficient, we need this bill so that we can continue working with Cato College so we can recoup our expenses. So we respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Any other witnesses in support?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Gavin McHugh on behalf of the California Correctional Peace Officers Association. We support this bill very much. We think this is exactly the sort of win-win programs we should be promoting and expanding in California. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? All right, seeing none. Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Seeing no comments or questions, the bill has been moved and seconded. So have a roll call, please. It has an aye recommendation.
Amiano.
Aye.
Amiano, aye. Knight. Aye. Knight, aye. Cedillo. Cedillo, aye. Hagman. Aye. Hagman, aye. Hill. Aye. Hill, aye. Mitchell. Aye. Mitchell, aye. Yamada.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
All right. All right, so we want to open up the agenda for missing votes on call. Everything's fine? All right, nobody. Mr. Cedillo, add-ons? Aye. Okay. Aye on the consent.
Mitchell, on the consent? Aye. Thank you.
And I'm going to change my vote to a aye vote on Ms. Liu's bill. I had stayed off originally. Okay. Just to be consistent. And I believe there's no other business. Oh, Ms. Yamada is going to come back. Let's, hope she doesn't take, do I have to stick around? I got to adjourn. Okay. That's one good thing about her. She's always on time. She always takes, like some of the other ones.